Hey, I'm Todd. Thanks for choosing to watch my video, and if you would subscribe it, like it, all that stuff, that'd be great. Otherwise, enjoy the video, and I hope it gives you the information you need and is helpful to you. Take care. So I do get a lot of comments with people saying I have saved them a lot of money, and I do get questions, hey, can I send you some money somehow? And now there is a way, if you so choose, called fan funding. You'll find it on the channel page right there. 2005 Mitsubishi Endeavor, doing the timing belt and probably water pump. Got this cover here. Got some Phillips type these dealies here. Tornado with the Phillips doesn't always work. You can use a small screwdriver and dig out the centerpiece. The center part needs to come out first. Got two there. And one down here. And this should basically come out. It's got a 12mm bolt here, 12mm bolt there, kind of tucked away, right up there. It's a little tricky to get to. You can certainly take this whole thing off if you want for easier access in there. And we are looking at stuff, serpentine belt. Looks like a probably 14mm bolt here. Loosen it a turn or two. Adjuster bolt goes up and down to adjust the tension for the bolt there. Looks like maybe it's just an idler probably. Will have to be coming off anyway. So you can use a 1/2-inch drive or a socket and line up top dead center if you'd like. It's a notch somewhere on the pulley. So that's a good start there. And taking the tire off is pretty easy. 21mm lug nuts. Break them loose a turn. Jack up the vehicle. Take them off the rest of the way. Use a jack stand. Use safety stands to protect yourself so it doesn't fall on you. You don't necessarily have to do things in order I do. I might do things a little differently, being having a hoist, but 22mm socket. You can make, they have special tools for holding this, so you can break this loose. So I'm just going to be using an impact gun, so I'll just put that on and use my gun. But you could also probably use a 2x4 and drill a couple holes in it with large bolts, long bolts, and then you can turn this, of course, so you can get to the 2x4 and have it lined up in there, and then you can use the 2x4 with the bolts and hold that in place while you break it loose with your 1/2-inch breaker bar. Like I said, I'll be using a gun, but I thought I'd give you that tip with the 2x4. For even more handy, you could probably build a tool out of metal, or just go ahead and buy a pulley holding tool. This is the other adjuster right here, so you can break that loose, and then the 14 is right there. Probably turn it counterclockwise to loosen up this pulley. It'll just push up. See this one over here already loosened up. See how it works. And the belt's dangling, so just turn that and loosen up the belt tension and take off the belt. Alright, well, I'll show you some more stuff following, but took the crankshaft pulley off. And I got a jack to support the engine. Took this off. 14mm bolts. Hold this part on here on the frame. 10mm bolt for the ground. I think they were 17mm bolt in the middle, and then two nuts. You take this out and you'll have the engine supported. Then you can take these covers off. I think it's like a 12 or 13mm bolt here. 10mm bolts for the smaller holes, again in the back. 10mm. You can get these up here from above. I think I got this one from below, and then there's one here. 10mm. 10mm for a wiring harness, you'll see. 10mm down here. You can see mine's broken. Need to take this bracket out of the way to get to that bolt right there. So I took the pulley off. Again, 13 or 14mm socket. took this off, then took these off right here. This comes out, and you get to that bolt, and then this comes out. So you can see how they interlink a little bit. Like so. Tabs here. And then these 1, 2, 3, 4 bolts here. This one stays in. When you let the engine down, when you let the engine hang down, it'll hang down about 3 inches. You can get these bolts out, no problem. Then you need to jack the engine up. Then you can get this bolt and this bracket assembly out through the top. That's basically where we're at. Here's our timing belt. Looks like our timing mark is close, but not quite, so we can maybe put the bolt in here. I wouldn't have a problem with a little channel locks on the edge here, and just turn it just a little bit more. It's a shot of the timing belt tensioner and the tensioner assembly right there. So we're going to take this bolt and loosen it up after we turn the engine over. Oh, we're going to turn it over probably one more time because I see timing marks. We're 180 degrees off, so we're going to turn this 360 to get those marks lined up. So let's line up the marks and we'll be back. Pretty well lined up right there. Same with the back. Can't see it as well, but sure it's lined up where it needs to be right there. All right, 14 millimeter, that's what the bolts are. Turn that and loosen it. Got our slack now. So, we'll take this off because we'll be doing the water pump as well right here. So, we can take the belt off. I believe it'll come off here. Doesn't really matter though, because we can just take this whole assembly off. We'll take this off and collapse this, or get a new one. If you get a new one, it'll come pre-collapsed. So, higher mileage, it might be a good idea to get a new one. I'm just stubborn. So we can probably just take off this crank sensor right here, 2 10mm bolts. Find the plug is right up there too. We take the plug off. Can do that. Your choice. All right, belts off. This bolt broke this bolt loose. Take this off. There might be a washer on the back side. Sometimes they have washers to help it pivot, so be aware of that. Let's see. It might be built on there, so there it is right there. Doesn't seem to be falling off, so you're probably all right. So that is it. Then we can take the water pump off right here. A couple different size bolts. 12 and 14 maybe, and a 10 even. How about that? 10, 12, 14. So I'm gonna go around and take them off, and yeah. There's the drain right there for the radiator if you want to drain the coolant before you take the water pump off, because this coolant will be coming out. So get yourself a drain bucket and take it off. Here's the new water pump. Here's the back side of the old water pump. There's an O-ring there. Let's go over to the car. Pipe there. So get some of this dirt out of here. The gasket here too. Nice metal gasket. So you can probably leave all the 10mm bolts in this, so when you pull it off, the front and the back come off together. Also a bracket up on the top here. I didn't talk about bracket right there, 2 bolts. So again, probably leave the 10mm bolts in and just take the other ones out, and you can pull it off as an assembly with a little prying. The front and the back will come off together. Not that it really matters. But now we want to clean this all up. Sandpaper, emery cloth, a little bit, scraper if you need to. Hopefully you'll have nice metal gaskets that come off pretty nice. And we really place this O-ring on here. Get a pick or something and pick it off. I did get a timing belt kit, so it gives me pulleys and seals and stuff. I recommend you think about that for a higher mileage vehicle. New tensioner. So we'll clean this up as well, and then we'll put the gasket on, of course, and we'll bolt the 10mm bolts and put this on the water pump. Cleaned everything up and got my gasket in here. Got the 4 10mm bolts in here. I just dropped these in here to make sure everything will fit into place between the gasket. So we're good there. So I don't find a torque spec for the 10mm bolts. I'm assuming somewhere between 89 inch-pounds and 109 inch-pounds. Somewhere in there will be tight enough. And this one is like 31 foot-pounds, the bigger bolt, and the smaller 12mm bolts are 18 foot-pounds. I believe the spec says. And do note, this is the shortest bolt, I believe, right there. There's a short bolt somewhere. Let's see if I can find it. Boom, I actually found it right there. That short bolt goes right there. So, we'll put these back in. So know where they go. So remember, short bolt right there. So we're going to tighten the 10mm bolts, and we'll put the O-ring on. Probably use a little spray adhesive or something, use something tacky to put this on the back side of this where it goes, and then you will be ready to install your water pump. You can maybe put just a little bit of grease on the O-ring to make the installation easier. So the water pump will come out the top or the bottom, and I found it pretty easy to put it right back in from the bottom here. Since I'm blessed with using a hoist, got the new one put in here, 17 foot-pounds for the torque on that. I highlighted the marks on the crankshaft. You can see them well, I hope. And got the water pump installed, got the O-ring on that pipe, and a little grease on the back side of this to facilitate installation. So it went on pretty nice. Again, a short bolt right here. So we'll tighten those up with the specs I previously mentioned. Can take it apart, so we do want to make sure that this does slide freely. Clean it up inside there and put some lubricant in there. So we do want to make sure it pivots on there freely. So just make sure, like I said, it does, so it doesn't somehow lock in place and prevent proper tension of your timing belt pulley. So we've got our timing marks lined up. I've highlighted them also with some whiteout. So you go ahead and put the belt on. We're going to put it on here, and we're going to go up to this right side, to the front of the motor. We want all the slack to be over here by the tensioner. So we can, when we release the pin, we can take up all the slack. So we got it down there. I took a rag and stuffed it underneath there so the belt stays engaged with the teeth. Came up around the pulley, of course, and then around here. I do like to make sure this is fairly taut, some decent tension on it, not flopping around. And you make some minor adjustments here if you need to, one way or the other. You know, rock it back a little bit so you can rock it forward and get the teeth to line up and take up your slack. But I'm feeling pretty good about this. We'll go around the water pump and then around the back. Yeah, so to take up the slack on this, might need to rock the rear camshaft my way a little bit. Sorry. To get this belt tight like I'd like it up on the top after the water pump. So I'm going to turn the camshaft clockwise a little bit to get the teeth to engage, and then I can rock it counterclockwise and get the time mark hopefully lined to back up. Alright, so we're down here then ready for tensioning. I usually use snap ring pliers. This is where you can maybe make yourself a little special tool, maybe again out of wood. A couple of small nails we want to fit in those holes and use that to tension the belt before we pull the pin. So we're just in like that, and we're just twisting it, making it tight, and then we'll tighten up that bolt, really. And if you look at the video before, you can see where these little holes were before. Kind of like try and put them back in that, basically in the same spot. The idea is to tension it like this and tighten it, and then when you pull that pin, it shouldn't come out very hard. It should come out pretty easy with all the tension being applied by you already with this pulley. So I'm gonna put the camera down, but we'll be going this way and tightening the belt, and then tighten that bolt. Alright, so we got that turned and the pin pulled fairly easy, so I'm pretty happy with it. I don't think it's quite as far as it could have been, but torque down to 36 foot-pounds, like 36, 36, 17, 36. So it's pretty good. If you're doing it on your own outside the backyard, maybe you even want to do not, unless you're, well, take this off and leave this bolted on. If you are going to get a timing belt kit, and you can take this off and try and bolt this back on when this is not on the vehicle, so it'll be in the right position. And then maybe put your belt on and then put this on and push up against the belt. That may work for you. It's just another option to try. A little more tension, but this hydraulic tensioner should keep decent tension, so happy with it. What you want to do then is probably put the pulley back on, put the bolt in, turn the engine over once, twice, double check your timing marks, and if they're good, go ahead and continue putting it back together. If not, then you want to reset your marks as needed so they line up. So it's going back together. I know I didn't shoot it coming apart piece by piece, but I got this piece in first when we're putting it back together, and so it's going to go in there from up top here with the engine jacked up. Got the bottom timing cover in. Next, this is going in, and the last piece, because of the way they work, is this piece right here on the back side. Because again, as we showed you, that interlocking stuff here. So we'll work this back there. You watch out for your wire for your crankshaft pulley, and then put the bolts back in. Back down here to install that 12mm bolt. I would suggest you install everything loosely before you tighten any bolts up. Make sure your tangs are interlocked properly before tightening anything down, and then everything's in place, all the bolts are started. Go ahead and tighten them down. Again, probably just looking at about 80 inch-pounds, 70 inch-pounds, pretty light for the 10mm bolts and 12mm bolts. Of course, once the engine is supported, you can take care of this engine mount, putting it back in. 17mm nuts and bolts here, as we talked about. 10mm bolt on the ground wire, and there's one back here, and then there are three 14mm bolts. So you jack up the engine. You could probably, I'd take these three out here, jack up the engine, and then take these other out, and you take this metal bracket, take this AC line out of the bracket. You can move it a little bit, and this will come up right through here without too much problem. So that's how you take care of that engine mount going in and coming out. If you want to fill it with coolant, or a nice 50-50 mix of coolant right in here, and I guess it's going to take like a gallon and a half or something like that. Gallon and a half, somewhere in there. There's a couple bolts with Loctite here, right there, and right there. Again, 14mm. So I'm going to take that off and of course put it back on. Putting this back on, it says to put oil on the threads of the crankshaft pulley bolt, and about 135 to 140 foot-pounds to make it tight. And then put the belts back on. Adjuster bolt here, and right there. So here's my setup for the driver's side rear spark plug. Kind of did break, and you can see the rust. If you have an air compressor, it might be a good idea to try and blow the dirt and debris that's around the spark plug. You get the boot off. You can usually twist and pull the spark plug boots off these. And then spray some air around there to dislodge dirt and stuff if you can. So again, this is just basically the tip for getting to that rear plug. The other ones should not be as difficult to reach.